Hello.
Do another one of these.
Welcome to the Character
Another,
Corner.
another one of these. All right. It's Ryan's big idea. Now I'm here. I get a turn. All right. We got a lot of stuff to talk about on my end. I will. You lead this interview with me because I'll just talk ad nauseum otherwise.
That is 100% fine.
Because
The, the
so
idea the
the
idea is to
idea,
get you talking about your characters.
the idea.
Yeah.
Do you want just a handful, or do you want me to start from the beginning?
Go ahead and start from the beginning.
It kind of begins outside of that because I didn't necessarily start role play, so to speak, with tabletop RPGs. That for a while I did it like every lonely person in our teen years did it. I did it through text, and out of all sites that we ended up using, it was Google Plus, where it started off with like basic stuff. Uh, Star Fox was the big one where I managed to. Well, I'm the guy who started an entire community based around it, where I think at most it was 34 people we had in that group, and that's for G plus numbers. Ryan, if you weren't there, you wouldn't really know it. If you had 1,000 followers on G plus, that was considered a massive account for that
Oh yeah.
site. That it was on everybody's phone. I didn't want to do Facebook because you lose your job because of stuff like that. I don't want like an employer looking up my name and then finding something I posted 3 years ago and then I get denied a job opportunity from that. Or I didn't want to use Twitter because 140 characters, you can bite me with that. Instagram, no. Snapchat, no. I just didn't want to use any of these sites, but G Plus just came on your phone. So it said, well, besides YouTube, and that's just the site that essentially raised me, and Newgrounds. But Newgrounds doesn't really have a social media aspect. So I just used G Plus and then got my start through that. And it was Star Fox, it was Pokemon, and just a few other niche interests I had. But in doing so, I ended up meeting Kyle because I started that community. And then that would continue on through our channel lore until eventually we end up making this channel. And that's how I got there. But usually when it came to that, the character that I would end up using, of course, we did the whole thing. Like we all do cringe in our teenage years. If this sounds embarrassing, it's because it is. But don't tell me that you didn't do this.
Yeah.
That
Me and my friends would. We have a not a G plus, but we would have a Google document that we would all type in.
yeah, that's another way of doing that. I remember what was it? I did like what some of my friends like a Google polls and like a Google slide, just messing around with stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just find like ways to do it, like keeping your conversations private, nobody jumps into the middle of it. And this was before Discord too, where it was easier to find a post and a thread on G plus, but Discord with you got this, and yeah, it's hard to find some old stuff. You do have the search bar, and this is what everybody uses now. But the character I used the most between me and Kyle in terms of canon characters was Leon. You familiar with Star Fox at all? Because I don't think you've played any of the games designed. Have you even played Star Fox 64?
I have not.
Because Leon is he is a chameleon. That's his whole character. And there are two wildly different interpretations of him between the games. Because in 64, the game that made Star Fox the big series that it used to be, he was this very refined British. I'm the sophisticated soldier between all of us, and I'm going to use my weapons to defeat you. Like the very posh sounding. And then he shows up in the next game, and apparently, like he got like brain damage or something in a crash because he comes in and he's this psychotic killer that talks about like really sadistic stuff. He fantasizes about how he's going to torture you before he shoots you out of the sky, and two wildly different characterizations. And I tried combining the two when I was using him. And it eventually led to this kind of like very flamboyant assassin kind of character, the way that I end up portraying him. And then, of course, well, you look at Kyle's profile picture, take a wild guess if you know Star Fox who he played as. It was Wolf.
Yeah.
And so that's how me and him got started. And then through doing that, me and him just slowly start getting more and more and more comfortable around each other. And after that, we end up. It started off as like a spinoff of Star Fox Ideas, but it eventually became its own thing, where we never really did form a proper title for it. It was just the Papatoon stories, where it was this desert planet that had this three-way war going on it, and we made a bunch of characters for it. He codified what he was going to do with Colt Mason for the rest of his life through that series, and we came up with a few other ideas. And in doing so, I developed a few characters that would form blueprints for characters that I would later use to tabletop RPGs down the line, but none of them that I'm super attached to. We did make one character that I have been using again and again several times under different interpretations. The name that he was first known as was Georgie, and this idea came to me while I was playing um, Snake Eater at the time, where if you played the Metal Gear Solid games, you know that these games reward you for not killing people. That you want to go around with your darts and you want to CQC and you want to knock these guys out. And it came from me just going around messing with some of the enemies in the game. And then eventually I decided, well, what if there was like someone who fought like this, someone who did this, used blow darts and CQC to choke people out, but then he just didn't stop doing it and then just kept tormenting his targets. And that's eventually what led to the creation of Georgie, who was this sadomasochist who just wanted to make people's lives absolutely miserable on the battlefield. But at the same time, he had a severe phobia of guns and a severe phobia of blood. He just couldn't do either of that. And making a villain protagonist off of that. And was he objectively a terrible character in terms of like moral standing, in terms of being a person? Yes, there's no doubt about that he was a bad guy. But it eventually why he worked so well and in that little series, and why we kept using him, is because he was the center of drama in some scenes. That this is a character that's got the same kind of um core personality tenets as Trevor Phillips. He can go off at any time. And that would eventually lead to the two different ways that me and Kyle make characters. Because you notice when Kyle makes a character, and I've mentioned this to him several times, but this is the first time we're bringing this up on the channel, that whenever Kyle makes a character, it's a hero. That it's unquestionably that's the hero character. There's no there's
Yeah.
qualities to them that stop them from being like Gary Stu, Mary Sue's, Paragons, but you can tell between the cast that they were heroes. Like look at Tyler Bassett when we did Bridge Across New York, and how there was no question that Tyler was supposed to be a good guy character,
Oh yeah.
or Kindi Masimba in our Bridge Across Russia game. But that playing around with Papatoon is what led to me discovering the kind of character that I liked writing, and amongst the plethora of characters we made, the kind of hero that I'm drawn to is the hero that pushes the definition of what could you even consider being a hero. That we take the protagonist role, and the protagonist is someone that you don't really root for that strongly, because it's either a gray on gray kind of conflict or a black on black kind of conflict, where I started going into the realm of villain protagonist, or the Byronic hero, the anti-hero, hero in name only is what I tend to make in terms of characters. And eventually I just didn't stop making that kind of character, and that would go on to be basically every character I'm about to tell you about. And occasionally I'll break it. Occasionally I'll make a character that is a good guy and just straightforward as a good person. But usually there's one or two gigantic drawbacks when it comes to making characters that are heroes. And don't take this as like 90s and anti-hero kind of stuff. I'm not making stuff like Shadow the Hedgehog, where it's not edge for the sake of edge, but it's heroes where they look good on the surface, but the more you look into them, the more you begin to realize that they're pieces of shit, or characters that are good but aren't nice about it. That kind of stuff, where they do have trouble traits, they do have outsider kind of traits, they have severe emotional obstacles, and I think it's what also helped inspire that was reading stuff like, I don't know, I didn't read this for school. I had a lot of reading that I did in my spare time when I was in high school because I couldn't have my phone out on the table with me. And Wuthering Heights was a book that I read. And just reading about Heathcliff and every other character in that book, and that's what cemented my obsession with making anti-hero characters. And um, should we go into D&D proper now? Because um,
Yeah, we
usually
can.
this yeah, okay, all right. The first character I made for D&D was for a Storm King's Thunder game, and that game went very poorly. The GM was an asshole, like to everyone at that table.
Yeah.
Where like I'm wondering, like, why are you even running games at all? Because it sounds like you don't enjoy being a dungeon master. And it was a Yuan-Ti wizard. That's the big brain build right there. Poison resist, poison immunity, and it was a character that at the time I was watching Gantz, and I would never recommend this to anybody. This was a big newbie mistake for me, where I was looking at characters like Kei Kurono and Nishi from Gantz, who are objectively bad people that don't try to be heroic at all. And that was the kind of wizard I ended up making. And I had fun playing as him, but I think that I didn't really know how to do an evil player, like party member, right. And eventually, like, I just had so much bad blood with that dungeon master that I just called no show to the sessions after that and just stepped out entirely. And I was able to play one-offs. I was able to find one-shots, and eventually I found a group that I could do D&D weekly with, and that was in November of 2021. And the first real character I made that I stuck with was it was D&D 5e. It was a Triton barbarian, and I named him Regis Lochladd. And when I was rolling stats with him, did I say barbarian? Sorry, fighter. That's the character I made him. He was a Triton fighter, and it's because I wanted the innate spellcasting, and I thought, well, if we have a character that could swim and breathe water, that'll just be useful for whatever might come our way. And as I was rolling stats for him, we were doing, I think it was 2d10 for our stat rolls for every individual stat, and I was doing great on all of them. And once you rolled your stat, you had to immediately assign it to what I was going to go to. So we would roll. I rolled an 18. I immediately put that into Constitution. And as we were rolling, I ended up bombing the intelligence and wisdom stats on the character. And I remember one player at the table said, "So, like, what you're playing as a child?" And I stopped for a second. I thought I wasn't going to do that, but now that you said that, and the joke with that character was, I took the noble background for him too, and he was this. Like Dragon Ball Z or like well, no, like Dragon Ball, that kind of stuff. Where I made a character where had Son Goku and Krillin on my mind. Where the whole joke is that this character is like a 10-year-old fish boy, but he's stronger than every adult in the party because he had I rolled an 18 for his strength score and a 20 for his constitution.
Yeah.
So we had this like whole montage at the start of game two of like a training montage because you have to go through a boot camp in order to qualify for the game, and like this kid is like already like he laps the adults in the obstacle course, and eventually he was a character that I just used to make jokes, where there was a room that if you said something out loud, it would make it real. So we would say snakes, and it would spawn snakes in the room. And he said, "I think something's going on when we say the word snakes," and then more snakes appeared. Okay, nobody say the word snakes, and then more snakes would come into the room. That kind of
Yeah,
shenanigans.
we all gotta have one character like that.
Or we were in a fight with giants, and instead of actually wanting to fight the giant, he was just more interested in like how to pick up his sword, where he just wanted to fight the frost giant just so he could pick up the sword and just swing it around, see if he could. And I think that I had two really good moments with him. We had a moment where we were in a maze that was filled with minotaurs, and while he was in the fight with them, he ends up doing a timeout with the Minotaur, and the Minotaur puts down the axe and says, "Okay, what's going on?" And he says, "We're not actually fighting to kill each other, are we? I thought we were, but do we have to? I don't think we have to. Okay, let's not kill each other then." And then just doing that, we had a little interaction, and then the next attack roll I rolled was a critical hit that downed the Minotaur immediately, and then another one was this was the moment that I decided that I really liked D&D, where we were escaping an underdark tunnel after a massive combat session, and 3 bullets were chasing us, and my character was holding the line the entire fight, and I managed to escape that dungeon with 3 hit points at the end of that. And that was after I used Fog Cloud and everything, and I used all my action surges, all my second wins. I was using the samurai, so all my advantages were used. And I came in, I had nothing. I just barely escaped that combat encounter with my character's life. And that game went
love
off.
games like that. When
Yeah,
you
like
end a session, you're like barely hanging on.
where it feels like you earn it when that happens with you.
Exactly, yeah.
And with that, that game went on until level 8, and then the group just kind of petered out like most D&D groups do. And I didn't continue with that group because by that point I was running my own games, because I decided that game, it was sandbox, but actually like worked as a sandbox because we had multiple stories happening at the same time, and I got to have my own story. And I got to test DMing, and I made a game about fairies in the Feywild, and that's where I started dungeon mastering, and then eventually I went to make Descent to Avernus and Out of the Abyss, and that Out of the Abyss game started this group. That's where I met Ham. That's where I met Meepian, and then eventually that's how I met you. Was through that group.
Good times, good games.
And I won't go into too much detail about those games where like me making NPCs. I want to like talk like player character kind of stuff, because this is more about like player characters, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And for a while, I was just out of the player character seat, where I didn't really have any characters I was using, and trying to find a Roll20 game is much harder than starting a game and then just looking for players, because
Yeah.
like so many dungeon masters don't send you anything if you don't get accepted to a game, so you have no idea whether or not anything is going anywhere or not. While I was running games, I did have a game on Friday that I joined, and Kyle would eventually join this group, but that group would eventually become the Friday group that I'm running Vampire with as I speak. And for that game, I used Miric Fyrentennimar. Uh, and this was a more heroic acting character, but he was a bumbling idiot. Just complete idiot. Where he was a dragonborn barbarian, wild magic, very fun. He was a very fun character to use. And just going in where I kept getting the light coming out of his chest for the wild magic. So just that extra D8 of radiant damage does so much for you, along with a boomerang blade. And his whole shtick was that he was this dragonborn that was rippling with muscles, this big like Johnny Bravo kind of guy. Where anytime there was a female character, Mirk would immediately hit on her. Anytime fitness was involved, he'd get involved. Anytime he got to gush about dragons, he'd gush about dragons. And he would just stick his foot in his mouth in every scene he was in. And that game was Ramen of Frost Maiden. That would eventually peter out, but then I had so much fun playing as Miric that I kept applying as him for different games. And eventually, for Dungeon to Mad Mage, I got accepted as a player for that, and I got to use Miric and finish out his story, where his whole shtick is I want to be a hero for attention. That was his motivation. I want people to love me. I don't actually care about doing the right thing. I just want glory. I just want attention. And he got that with Dungeon to Mad Mage, where I started off that game with him at level 16 is when I joined that game. So just imagine going from playing like level 5 to playing at level 16.
Oh yeah, I love playing high level characters. I can't imagine going from 5 to 16.
Because was it like D&D 5e's Barbarian. I think I joined that game at the point where you could just rage forever. There was no way to really knock you out of that. Yeah, level 15, you get persistent rage,
Yeah.
and by that point, your rages don't mean anything anymore. You just rage once, and then that's it. That's all you gotta do. And the only time I would turn that off and turn it back on is if I wanted to re-roll my wild magic effect, and that was it. And going around with that, I think my favorite moment in that game was with Miric. We were in this room on the second to last floor where it was 5 death slots and an archmage, and we got hit with 6 fireballs in a row,
Who?
and I only took 36 damage from it.
Only that's not bad at all.
Yeah, because by that point the Fizzband book was out, and uh, it was resistance, and then after I saw it was nothing but fire spells, all my turn I turned on the fire immunity, and then just swept that entire room with Miric. Is it was just it's really fun playing with that kind of character, and I'll bring him back every now and then as an NPC. I just gotta like find a good spot to put him because he's a very like comedic kind of character.
Yeah.
I'll put him in the thumbnail. He's the red dragonborn with the eyes for everyone on YouTube looking at this, and and around the same time too with NPCs. He was an NPC. He never became a player character, but he's about to be because if Kyle runs Miami by night, this is the guy I'm using. Um, you remember that Papatoon story where I told you that we made characters blueprints for them that would eventually become full-on characters?
Yeah.
Um, one of them, one character that we made was Kyohei Yuki, where that was a mechanic kind of character, this big technophile that was this big dweeb. And eventually, as we started like tweaking his character, he became like less of a gearhead kind of character, and like slowly started becoming like more of like a sex character as we were making him.
Yeah.
Until the end result was made, and that end result was Nozomi Nishiyama. And this is my go-to deal maker. Whenever I have a character that I'm having brokering deals, like devil deals, bargains for like money, weapons, armor, this is the character I use for it.
Uh,
And
didn't you use him in our game before?
Las Vegas,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. I thought that name sounded familiar.
Where his whole shtick is that he's this hedonist kind of character that he doesn't really have any aspirations besides I want stuff. Where he wants money, he wants food, he wants women, sometimes dudes, just anything that you would imagine from like an opulent, excessive king kind of character. That's what he was. He'd be. He was a poser too because he thinks he's somebody when really all he is like this Coomer kind of character. This like, he's not a slob, but just like very lazy, just puts minimal effort. Ain't like anything he does is the path of least resistance. Where when you encountered him in Las Vegas by night, he just put all of his points in the thaumaturgy and just expected that to carry him through the entire game.
I
And then
mean,
an ass might got him.
that is one way to play.
Yeah. And I'm eventually going to bring him around for Miami by night, where it for Miami, I looked at when I was making character ideas for Miami. I wanted to do like pastiches of '80s movies, and then stuff like Risky Business and Secret of My Excess came to mind. And I thought, well, hold on, Nozomi would be perfect for this. Let's just use him for this. But he started off as like a D&D warlock NPC, and then he became a vampire for Vampire the Masquerade. And I made him Tremere first off, but now I'm thinking about gearing him towards Toreador Anti-Tribu or Setite for his clan. Because after all, he only has one thing on his mind at all times, and that's sex. A character that's just like made to be a Coomer by design.
There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with
There
that at
is.
all.
We have to make the Nick Kid a vampire. And see that man's that's going to date the video. That man's going to become irrelevant very soon. that prison sentence is coming up very soon, Ryan.
I bet.
See who else now like we're going more into like vampire and me starting this channel
Yeah.
with characters. But one more thing to bring up before we went into vampire. Sean, I met him through a game that I was playing on Wednesdays, and that was a dragon heist game. And I have never played a game of Dragon Heist that has stayed until the end because that game just seems to be a magnet for really shitty players. And Sean can tell you that story, but I met Sean. I was playing as Yan, and whenever it comes to making characters, I want to make multiple characters that I play once, and then I'll just bring back every now and then. Yan is a character I want to keep playing as because I keep retooling and reworking his story. Where if anyone wants to pull the hipster card on me, you can do it now. I was using the Githyanki, the Githzerai before it became mainstream with Baldur's Gate, where I was looking at these guys back in 2001. I thought this was a cool story. And I got to play, he started off as a Githzerai, but then I made him Githyanki because I like Misty Step more than I like Shield. And Yan is the green guy in our thumbnail. And I made him androgynous by design because I like characters with high appearance scores. But his whole shtick is that he was a deserter from. At first, it was Zerthamon and the monks of Limbo. Then it became Valaki's army, where he fled, and now he's just wandering around as this warrior without a cause. He's a monk, a shadow monk is why I made him, and he started off as a rogue in the Dragon Heist game, a mastermind rogue. Before I began to realize I like monk more than I like rogue, and I stuck with him at being a monk. And he started off as this ex-convict when we did Dragon Heist, and then I made him into a mercenary when I joined a Tuesday game, used Yan for that, and then he became a deserter, a battlefield deserter, where his comrades died. He began to realize that the Githyanki just didn't care about their soldiers, and then he quit and off to go off and pave his own way as a soldier. And this wasn't intentional, but the amount of time I took like clothing damage in that game, eventually my character just stopped wearing clothes entirely. And eventually I just made that like a character tick for Yan, that he just runs around in like basically a Fundushi loincloth and that's it. It's like, because he was having us keep track of our currency, and I'm blowing 5 gold on clothes every time I go into a new settlement. I'm done paying this money. So behold, that's it. That's all he's wearing.
Yeah. It's
And
to a point where you're just like, I don't care anymore.
just a money hole because he's in the front lines taking damage from fireballs. And eventually, you know how the Shell monks have that teleportation power?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That was something I used constantly with him.
It's
Where
such a. I mean, there's no reason not to.
yeah, he became this big ninjutsu kind of character. And eventually I had him fight using ninjutsu combined with snake style kinpo. Because at the time I was playing as Yan, I started trying to get serious with Tekken, and Lei Wulong was the character I wanted to get good with. I've played Tekken before. I played it every now and then, just periods in my life, and Li Xiaolong was the character I wanted to try to get good with. But then Wei Lu Long spoke to me, and then he became my co-pilot for those games. And he uses Kenpo, so I made it Snake style. And his story, I'm still not done telling it because Yan is a very no-nonsense kind of character. Once again, he's an anti-hero where if a situation is going bad, he'll just dip out of the situation. He's not going to die for something that's too much trouble. But he has his own sense of honor because it's more about he wants success, he wants money, he wants capital. He'll quit a job if it's not worth it, but as long as the job still has a reason for him to continue, he'll do everything he can to complete the job. And he's loyal to his companions because there's a scene in Saltmarsh where uh we had an entire group of lizard folk chasing after us. So Yan scoops up our sorcerer in his arms, uses Step of the Wind, and then our druid turns into a spider, jumps into his hair, and I'm running with like carrying 2 party members with us while these lizard folk are chasing after us, throwing spears.
That's nice.
It was this great escape moment too.
Yeah.
And eventually, I had it be in Dragon Heist, and I had it be in Saltmarsh. That at some point in that game, Yan would swear loyalty to at least one of the characters. Where I don't remember the name of the character. It started with a B, but it was a Drow bard in Dragon Heist that he swore loyalty to, and Sean was in that game, and Sean became Yan's confidant. And then when eventually I left that game because the guy that was playing the half-orc fighter sucked as a person, and then the dungeon master was a piece of shit that definitely didn't have issues with women. You definitely couldn't tell that he was divorced.
It definitely didn't have issues.
Definitely couldn't tell. And just other shit that was going on with that group, and eventually just left. And I took Sean with me, and we started our own game on Wednesday that was Lost Mines of Phandelver, and that became Dungeon of the Mad Mage, where I'm now running Dungeon of the Mad Mage. I think I've been running this game for 2 years by this point.
That's not bad.
Mad Mage goes on for a while, dude.
And it's good to find games like that where you can just stick around. Like, I've been with this group for what, 2-3 years now.
Yes, and I'm happy that you stuck around for this long.
I am too.
Because I feel like you're somebody that I can talk to about stuff. Where, and same thing too. Like, if you want to come and talk to me about anything, I'll listen to you. Where I'm not going to tell you something like, sorry, I can't do anything for you or anything or shit like that, because I know that doesn't help. And with that Wednesday group, we've had, because it's Dungeon Mad Mage, very few people stick with the game beginning to end. But some of the guys who do, I found a guy that logs Ethan Ralph like I do in in that game. But it's not just me, Sean, that has an obsession with Ethan Ralph. I found another guy who does, and me and him still DM it. Me and him still DM each other. He's not in the game anymore, but me and him still talk. And another guy in our group, Ovitz, where he's like a guy from Canada that we talk to, and he's a guy that I have a kind of relationship where we can get personal with each other. And we met Oscar, and Oscar's cool. And same with Rick Ross, because I'm playing D&D with these guys for like two years now. So yeah, it's that game where like D&D's was why I saw super special about D&D is you're able to form connections with tabletop games that you just can't really find anywhere else.
Yeah.
And it helps that you bond through characters first, and then you make the personal connection after that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
And with Yan, I'm still itching to use him again, because if Kyle runs DC 20 instead of Miami by Night, I'm 100% using Yan, because I want to pop him out again. And Kyle likes the Gith too. He'll use the Gith.
Yeah.
And Sean will come in with the character that he was using in Dragon Heist, Tyr Raziel, Half Angel, and then we actually get to continue what we were doing in Mad Mage after in Dragon Heist, after I don't know that plot point being paused for 2 years in real life by this point.
Yeah.
And see, now we can actually get on with Vampire, just the stuff that I've made with Vampire. All right.
So who do you want to talk about first?
With Las Vegas by Night, what character jumped out to you the most when I did that game?
Personally, it had to have been, and this might be biased on my end, but it had to have been Geronimo.
Where Geronimo Baseggio.
Yeah.
Where, when I was reading Vampire, the Camarilla was cool, the Anarchs are cool on the surface, and then you realize that these are just a bunch of schmucks that tear down everything and drag people down with them on their just path of self-destruction.
Yeah.
The Sabbat jumped out at me when I was reading these guys, where I read about the Sabbat Jihad, that there's this entire secret war going on with these vampire demigods, and this group that has been fighting this war for so long, they no longer even remember what the Jihad was supposed to be, and have fallen apart in all these different splinter sections and cells. And I read about the Sabbat, and I decided that is what I want to make. Those are the kind of characters that I really want to develop on. And we had Camarilla, Anarchs, and Sabbat in that game, but the Sabbat, you can tell I put more love into the Sabbat than the other characters.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Where we had a lot of Sabbats, where we had Grisha Vasevlad, who was a Zamichi that vicissituted people into becoming his body, and he turned himself into an actual dragon and was living underneath a castle casino in Las Vegas.
Oh, so who was the one turning people into furniture?
Yeah, that was him. That was Grisha.
Oh yeah, okay. I thought
Yeah,
it was.
and he just vicissitude people because he thought it was funny. He thought human suffering was funny. What
Yeah,
was his character?
that's
and
what vampires do.
and then on the complete flip side was Geronimo Baseggio, where you remember how I introduced him, where you went into his church.
Yeah,
It was a Roman Catholic church,
pitch
and
black.
yeah, everything was dark. You couldn't even see your own hand in front of your face
Yeah,
when you stepped in there. And he would manipulate the shadows so you could see the ground. That I got a little bit of light that would bounce off the ground out of nowhere, and you walked all the way into this where you could only see the altar and him standing in front of it. And he turns to you and spills out that the Gehenna is upon us, Malkav is going to appear, and he gives you communion and formally brings you into Sabbat, where Tabitha was Camarilla, and then Ragnar and Colt were anarchs.
yeah.
Oh well, Colt never really was an anarch; he was just pulled into them,
He had
and
no choice to be.
then Ragnar formally joins the Sabbat along with Colt, and then Tabitha's loyalties lied elsewhere, but she went along with the bond with the ritual anyway. And he lays out for you that he says with Sabbat, um, he instead has a different interpretation that the Sabbat are saving humanity from the Camarilla, who's Pied Pipering them into Gehenna, and that with him and his Lasombra associates, he's going to try to save humanity. Um, though there was a conflict of interest because you need to feed off of people, but you were given the impression of Geronimo that he actually cared about humans, that he still had humanity in him,
Yeah.
while every other member of Sabbat was following a path. And you also met his number two, Ruslan Maximov, who I've used several times in our
Yeah.
games,
Since then, yeah.
where it's the horror story about what happens when you use obtenebration too much, an ego death. And now it's just this walking puppet that is only ever controlled by Geronimo using Dominate, or whoever else is picking up his puppet strings. And along with that, you had one other guy, Rudy Holland, where that was your mentor when you were playing Sylvester. And
Yeah.
he died saving you from the Black Fury that was coming after you.
What a man.
And the way I read Sombra, I know the Sombra usually aren't supposed to be good people, but no, I saw something. There was just something noble about the Sombra to me that jumped out at me, and that's why when we did the Sombra episode for the channel, I got all in costume and I had the mask on, and the gloves over my hands. I
Yeah.
was making noises to the microphone.
Yeah, yeah. I remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah, because I just like the Sombra that much. That's number four of my favorite clans. Where it's very easy to use Sombra too, because I don't know, I have a character that craves power. Make a Sombra. Easy.
It's true.
Easy character.
Me, I went
Yeah,
with you know what, Ventru.
with Ventru. Where the power is deserved in your hands.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at that. Where if you're in a vampire game where I don't know, I'm already doing Nozomi for Miami by Night, but if you did Ventru and I did Sombra, yeah.
Hey, hey.
That'll be very fun.
I could. I could absolutely.
And uh so any other character jump out at you from Las Vegas by Night, or should we move to New York by Night?
The other character was it was either Ragnar's sire or it was Colt's sire.
Yeah, yeah, it was Bizkid is who you're thinking of.
Bizkid, yeah.
Where was one, you see why he's called Bizkid, because his name was Fabrice Wilson. Uh, oh, look out
Poor
for
guy.
Fabrice. He's gonna get you.
Poor guy.
Nobody's gonna be scared of that. Where he was he got his start by fighting for the French in the French Revolution, and then he appears in America years and years later as a rapper with a record deal and everything, in public appearances, and you perform concerts as a Bruja vampire. And his raps and all of his lyrics are trying to incite riots and cause like far left propaganda, resulting in Antifa-like behavior.
Which ended up pulling the entire West Coast into like this state of frenzy.
Because he pairs up with the Malkavian that is summoning Malkav, and then they use high-level demontation over the radio to send everyone into a riot that results in 36 million people from California all the way to the Rocky Mountains killing each other in a giant riot. Amazing. See what you can accomplish when you don't care about the masquerade?
That is a small breach in the masquerade.
Just small. And behold, I never going to chat GPT about that too, and asking if that were to happen, what would happen? And it said, oh, if California was gone, complete economic collapse of America. Because that state produces so much money and food and other products that you take for granted that if it were to go, so many other industries would go along with it, resulting in the pre-apocalyptic America that you would see in Rage Across New York, where we were going for a very Mad Max Escape from New York kind of vibe with that game. And BizKids, the way he went out too, because I had him target Ragnar in this sire versus child fight. And that whole fight was ultimately Ragnar emancipating himself, not just from the blood bond, but from his past in the revolutions, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, and seeing that the anarchs never actually cared about what they were talking about, that they were all full of hot air, and Ragnar was just going to leave them behind to become his own man.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's part of the reason why we love Ragnar so much as a character, because he took his life into his own hands with this character. And
not many vampires can do that.
Oh, absolutely not. You earned your anarch revolt.
Yeah.
with Ragnar. And now let's get into Rage Across New York. Let's get into that now.
And I would be remiss to say that if there was one character that stood out the most, Snooter.
Everybody loves Snooter. We had so many people in the server too talking about how much they love Snooter as a character.
Snooter was great. He was just a good boy.
Yeah, just a little kid boner that's just going around. And he's turning stuffed animals into fetishes in towns, and he gives you a stuffed rabbit that just fills the room with stuffing when you tear it open.
It's great.
It just having an objective like you see Snooter, you see a kid character like that, and you want to instinctively protect him. You want to nurture him. You want to see him succeed with that kind of character. And it was also around to tell jokes, because the way he's introduced, we had the Tourette's guy reference where you're just standing next to a pile of garbage and all of a sudden you just see something moving under the garbage, kicking up the garbage as it moves. And then he pops his head out. It's just this puppy. And he was one of the a handful of characters that survived the events of Red Cross New York.
I'm glad.
And same thing too, because a character that I want to bring up in that game was Wrath of the Storm.
Oh, he was such a great character, but he was also very back and forth.
Yeah, where you loved him and you hate him at the same time.
Yeah.
A theme that I was going for with Rage Across New York, and I don't know how well I conveyed it, but it made sense to me and it made sense to Kyle, was old generation ideas being lost to the newer generation, and whether or not that's a good thing. And Wrath of the Storm was a man of his time. There was a 20-year age gap between him and the oldest member of the party. And it showed, because he was very set in his ways. It was honor and glory and wisdom. The renown, the litany must come first.
Yeah.
And you remember that scene where we met Freddie Mason, and Freddie just breaches the veil and gives away all this classified information right in front of a Shadow Lord?
Yeah. Not the greatest,
Yeah. And you just have he's looking at them the same way, what exactly is it that you do here scene from Office Space, that kind of look. where the minute this conversation's over, he's being interrogated. And eventually his character, where Tyler, who had this big man crush on him, I had this big blow up argument with Storm after he tried to leave, where he said, "I can't be around you guys anymore. You're not following the litany. You're disrespecting. You let the Ratkin do whatever they want. You let a vampire get away. You're collaborating with all these guys. There's no honor, no renown, anything in any of this. I'm out." And that would be what that was supposed to be the torch passing, so to speak, in an unceremonious way of, this job is now out of the hands of the old guru and it's now in the hands of the young guru.
Yeah.
And that would become Grim and the rest of the pack. And how he appears at the end too, where Wrath of the Storm, his character concludes with him surviving the fight, and after we all swore he was going to die.
Yeah.
And he comes back and he asks Chico for a position amongst the Bone Gnawers instead. Because he no longer feels like he is a Shadow Lord anymore. He doesn't feel like he can show his face around them. So he begs for forgiveness and then becomes a Bone Gnawer.
Which was shocking to me.
Yeah. And where he's no longer set in his ways, and he's admitting, maybe it's time that I hang up the sword and I let the younger generation do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if we run a werewolf game as player characters, Kyle is eventually going to get around to a Rage Cross Los Angeles. Wrath of the Storm will be the character I use for that.
Nice.
And he was supposed to be the player character for Rage Cross Appalachia. But then a conversation I had with Danston Murphy changed my mind, and I decided I had to do Ends the Road. That was the only character I could make for that game after that conversation. And I'll get into detail about it in a minute, but do you want me to talk about Freya Sanders?
If you want, you could also talk about Burst Bruiser if you want as well.
Yeah. And Bacchus.
And Bacchus.
Because Freya Sanders was just in the game to make sure you guys stay alive. Was ultimately what I put in the game for.
Yeah.
Because I had a mage, an idea for a mage character, because I was reading about mage as I was running that game, and I wanted to test some mage ideas, but I didn't have an organic way of just putting a mage into the story until I remembered, hold on a minute, if Grimm's the pack alpha and he's not having sex and Tyler isn't that kind of shameful? Because in nature, he who has sex is the alpha. And that's when I had Grimm go up and talk to Karis, and Karis said, well, I know this like lesbian club, like gay bar that's got a mage in it, and then they led to you going to the North Pole, as we called it.
The North Pole, classic.
And you met with Freya Sanders, who very quickly wormed her way into the hearts of everyone at the table.
I gotta say, making the North Pole mage and not Fae was a missed opportunity, but at the same time, it gave us Freya.
It gave you Freya, where it looks like it's just going to be like a cut and chuck one night stand because she casts a spell, and even though it's 24 minutes, to you and Freya it was 24 hours in the booth. And after that, she decides that she likes you and she wants to hang around you. And what was going to be a character I was just going to use for a few sessions, a few fights, and then eventually put off to the side, eventually I liked the dynamic she had with Grimm so much that I kept her around. And slowly but surely that became Grimm's story, where it was the big bad wolf learns to become human.
Yeah.
And it's through the Cult of Ecstasy and how they're all about sharing the love, which is what their paradigms usually are. And eventually you start seeing Grimm change as a character and be discussed at your character corner.
Yeah.
But at the same time too, that's one of those instances where the player characters become attached to an NPC that doesn't. When you make an NPC that is made to cover characters' weaknesses, you don't want them to be too strong, because that's a DMPC, and that will take the wind out of a game if you do that.
Absolutely.
So all of Freya's spells had a massive drawback to them, Could she have gone into fights by herself and won? Maybe. Maybe she could have done that. But given how deadly World of Darkness combat is, I wouldn't bank on it. But paired up with Grimm, they become an unstoppable duo at the expense of all of her magic causing her heart to beat arrhythmically. And there were 2 different instances where you had to revive her.
Yeah.
And she's helping you, but you can't take that help for granted because the more she's cast her spells, the more she fucks up her heart in doing so.
Yeah.
And that whole scene too, where you had to do an impromptu surgery and try to restart her heart.
Yeah, that was a little too intense for.
Yeah, that was a tense scene because, like, shit, this character's dying. We generally don't want to see this character die, and eventually, I started like phasing out more and more for magic so I could let you stand out for the last fights. And sure enough, you did, because that fight with Bruiser, that was a team effort in that fight.
Oh yeah, it was.
Yeah. There's one other character I have like that in Mad Mage. That's a NPC helper, Obelisk Black, where you met him with arrows.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
And I expanded upon him in Dungeon of Mad Mage, where I made him a full-blown tiefling, and he's a divination wizard in this game. So behold, like the divination stuff in the DM's hands.
Yeah.
And he is so useful as a wizard because he covers so many different bases that the party doesn't. I have never seen in my life in D&D player characters try to keep an NPC alive the same way they're doing with Obelisk. Because whenever he goes down, immediate priority is to get him back up with Revivify.
Yeah,
where
they have to at that point.
Yeah, all hands on deck. We need to get this guy back up to full health, or at least half health.
Put this guy in a lead case in a padded room so that he never dies.
Because I realized with that party we were lacking a blaster, so I made him a divination blaster, and then the player characters became super attached to him. And he's fun to use. He's a British mage who just wants to learn more stuff. He doesn't let his tiefling heritage get in his way. He just accepted who he is.
Yeah.
And then Burst Bruiser. Ryan, have you ever played Battletoads?
I have not.
But you at least know what that is.
I can't say that I do. I could take a quick Google search, though.
It is this infamously difficult NES game that was just made to waste your time with how needlessly difficult it is. And you see what it looks like?
Yeah, it reminds me of that one frog from like all those old cartoons.
Like flip a frog?
I don't know.
But there was a boss in that game called Blag, where I looked at him, and then I was looking at the Ratkin, and then I was looking at Battletoads Arcade, where you fight him as a boss fight, and he's the hardest fight in the game. There's a fight where he just becomes gigantic and smashes you, and it's an instant kill if he lands on you. And I might be misremembering that. Yeah, I might be. Oh, Michigan J Frog.
Michigan J Frog, yeah.
Yep.
I'll post that for you.
But I was looking at that with Blag, with him as a character in Battletoads, and I thought, well, what if we took this and we translated this into the Ratkin for World of the Apocalypse? And then I started tweaking this idea where I said, okay, we got this super strong rat. He's got the huge merit. He's fat. He's got this like Kevlar that gives him boost to his soak rolls. What else can I do to juice this guy up? And then eventually he became this dark messiah kind of character where he was pumped full of wild spirits to the point where the wild basically was living in his stomach. He had all these different spirits inside his guts.
I got to know, who pumped him full of wild spirits? Was it him himself, or was someone feeding him the wild spirits?
Rat God, the totem.
Really?
Yeah. Where Rat himself said, "This will be the guy who will lead my Ratkin to glory. No longer shall I rely on the bone gnawers and only the bone gnawers. We'll have the Ratkin solve the problem." And sure enough, he comes out, and he's filled with so many spirits, he instantly regenerates damage because of the wild spirits in him, where nothing can hurt this guy, nothing can kill this guy, and you have to overload him in order to kill him, which is what happens with you dropping a Ferris wheel on him in a final fight,
Yeah.
and a Poot landing a killing blow, and then he becomes this massive rat head abomination after his health is reduced to 0 because he implodes and turns inside out. And
that's gotta be a very ugly picture.
But playing as him and just have like this big brutish character, where playing like it was like the same kind of vibes I got from playing Miric Fyrentennimar, but for an objectively evil character, along with the trope of the Dark Messiah being one of my favorites, and with it being a rat, and with Werewolf the Apocalypse, the rat can have immediately formed a place in my heart, where it's how versatile they are to use, and just how disastrous they are and chaotic they are, and all this shit you can get into with the ratkin. It's a great NPC. It's a great idea they put in there. You take the Skaven and you put them into World of Darkness.
Yeah, I gotta say,
and become this.
They hold a special place in my heart too. I play Vermintide too.
And they become this massive human extinction cult. And you've played Vermintide, haven't you?
Yeah, Vermintide too. Yeah.
Yeah, so you got all this fun stuff in it. I think they just added a PvP mode in that game.
I hope so.
I think so. I think they did. PvP and Vermintide, it's just a weird combination. But
it's a good way to troll your friends. What do you mean?
And playing Burst Bruiser, if we do a Freya game, that will be the player character. Where I'll try to build him like that. I don't think I'm going to get him as powerful, but playing as the Dark Messiah of the Ratkin, and just going around and causing havoc with that. That'd be something fun to do. He made a little appearance on our Christmas special too.
He did?
Yeah, he's in the Christmas special. That game takes place in 2007.
Oh, okay.
So this is 13 years before he goes absolutely ballistic.
I was going to say, he survived?
Yeah. And you have King of Greed's character just walk past him, and like you're walking past a guy that can just smash your head like a grape.
Yeah.
It's the same as walking in front of a loaded shotgun that's attached to a string. And then, well, hello again, Graham. It's good to see you again. I'm Bacchus. How have you been?
Oh, God.
Don't laugh like that. You know you love me, Grim.
Yeah, love is a very strong emotion that I only feel for certain people.
You see, I was looking at Bacchus. I was looking at all the different stuff that we had, and the totem was supposed to be Honey Badger, but then I was looking at what Malkav was doing and how he was like attributed to Dionysus. I thought, wouldn't it be crazy if the guy that was also called Dionysus had an issue with that and became the totem? And I realized that was such a good idea. That was a really good idea, and I just had to use him. And he comes in, and he's this like big fat werewolf. He's super charming. Like Elmira and Tyler throw themselves at him, and he talks like Snagglepuss, and he's got this like all these different like queer inflections to him too. It was really fun just being able to play as him, and just anytime he comes in, he immediately deflates the tension. It was a really calming kind of character to be around, because whenever you're around Bacchus, you feel safe. Don't you feel safe, Grim?
I gotta say, he was a great character, but Grim could not stand him.
Being around a guy this fruity.
Not fruity, but just his overall snobbiness.
And then you saw his other two incarnations, where you have Bacchus, you have Dionysus, and you have Libero. There's 3 different interpretations of that god. So he has 3 different aspects that all act a little bit differently. But the one that you saw the most was the Bacchus incarnation.
Yeah. I think Grim gained more respect for him after he started turning into like his war form.
Where he comes in and he appears as this like Oran host club kind of character with long blonde hair and a white suit with roses. And he fights like that, yeah. And he wins.
It was the winning part that he more gained respect for.
And I had him as a bonus boss too. You could have fought him in the game, but no, we never did encounter that plot point. And that would have been a fight that would have taken like half the session.
Yeah. Could we have won? Were there possibilities that we would win?
It's more like fighting Whis or Beerus from Dragon Ball Z, where you win only because Bacchus decides that's enough.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Because we had a whole implication too that Bacchus was way stronger than he was letting on.
Yeah.
And that was just a really fun character to play as in that game. And who else do we have next? Shall we talk about Ends the Road?
Yeah.
All right. Ends the Road. I had a conversation with Danston Murphy where he was saying that the worst tribe in Werewolf is the Wendigo. And I asked, why is it the Wendigo? And he says, because it feels like a tribe where every character is the same. Where you only have one Wendigo and that's it. It's a tribe where everyone is just Wendigo 1, Wendigo 2, Wendigo 3, and then that's it. And then I decided, you know what? Just because you said that, we're playing a Wendigo for Ridge Cross Appalachia. And that became Ends the Road, where instead I had a character that was super nationalistic, like the Wendigo, but also had all these moral vices chaining them down. And I think you know where we're going with Ends the Road as a character.
It could just be me, but I have no idea.
So I'll let you on some of the stuff where Ends the Road. What I was telling you about anti-heroes, out of few of those in one shots, Ends the Road. Would you say there's anything heroic about her?
Anything what?
Heroic at all?
My gut says yes, but my brain says no.
Because she's objectively a villain protagonist. Because you like how antagonistic she is in so many scenes, and I do that by design, where she is a character that is designed to stir up shit. Is what she is, and I designed her with party interaction in mind, namely her going around and like pissing on the party or pissing off the party, but at the same time, there's people that she likes because Autumn leaves. She has a sibling relationship with.
Yeah.
Because like your siblings, you're at each other's throats. You hate each other in one scene, and then they love each other in another scene, and that kind of complexity with the relationship. But Cleft Reed, she's looking at Cleft Reed and thinks that that he is just the worst, that you're everything she hates about America, and she has ideas for Cleft Reed. She's going to take you, and she's going to turn you into the werewolf that you need to be, not that you could be, but because let's face it, Cleft Reed isn't going to go anywhere anytime soon. You're a deformed menace with arms that she can snap like a twig. You're not going to be a badass, but we can at least try to get you to the point. Oh yeah, she's definitely right about that.
What do you mean? He's strong. He's buff.
You rely on these guns too much. You need to throw a punch once in a while. That punch you did that blew up the ghost, the Black Spiral Dancer, that's what you need to do more of.
What was that? That was a rock, I thought.
Yeah, the fire punch.
Oh, when he shoved his arm down the throat of the Black Spiral Dancer.
Yeah, she looks at that and she thinks that you need to do more of that. You need to put these guns away. You need to use your fist like I do. And once again, that whole brutish aspect that I did with Bruiser, that I did with Miric, that comes in with Ends, because you see the playbook I do with her, where just advance, punch, kill in one punch, move on to the next enemy.
Yeah.
Where she, it's kind of like the reverse of Grimm, because Grimm would play with his food. Grimm would use bodies as weapons. Ends is just out. Yeah, Ends just wants to splatter you across the ground
as quickly as possible.
And just only with how openly sadistic I make Ends the Road too.
Yeah.
Because we introduce her with her crushing a man's ribs by sitting on him in cross form.
Yeah, that is true.
And with her character too, a lot of the stuff she has comes from a more darker place, because Kyle has already revealed this in context clues, and I will say for this segment, graphic content warning for what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
Uh, so you know what she did with Matt Griner in that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that she's super sexual by nature.
Yeah.
And she had that conversation with the Black Fury where she was saying, instead of becoming, um, instead of shutting down and withdrawing in on yourself, you've instead become super promiscuous, and I know why you're doing it. And we gave him a funny name. It was a Black Spiral dancer called Tube Steak, because Black Spirals just will call themselves anything.
Yeah.
I had an idea for Tube Steak being a lesbian at first, being called Blowcake, and eventually I decided no, Tube Steak sounds more like what an actual like douchebag would call himself.
Yeah.
And the reason why Ends the Road is as promiscuous as she is because she was forcibly impregnated by Tube Steak. And the reason why this is because I was reading something about trauma like PTSD, and I read something that said some people that have been targets of rape, victims of rape, instead of becoming averted to sex, instead become incredibly promiscuous. And that caught my attention. I was thinking, well, that kind of sounds like bullshit to me. I don't believe you. And I started looking into that, and it's like a post hoc self defense mechanism.
Yeah.
Where you become super sexual as a means of trying to maintain control of your sex life, and where you push the rape out to the back of your mind. You don't want to think that somebody took advantage of me. You want to think that, oh, I let that happen, and you cope with that, or I'm going to become the promiscuous one and become super forward and try taking advantage of other people. Not necessarily becoming a rapist. That's not what you turn into, but you become super sexually forward to try to cope with the loss.
Yeah.
And that's why Ends the Road is the way she is when it comes to sex. And when she tells you it's alpha behavior, she's lying to you about that. And the whole intention to it Ends the Road is that the the more you try to pray into her, the more you begin to figure out why she is the way she is, the more she starts becoming this like Trevor Phillips force of destruction, and more of just a character just like really emotionally sad when you begin to figure out what she went through to make her the way that she is.
Yeah.
Where her biggest inspiration when I was making her was Lucy from Elfen Lied, was what came to my mind when making her. And you see that in the way she fights too, with the way she'll tear enemies apart. And we haven't revealed the other two things that have happened in her life that's made her the way that she is. And the whole character me and Kyle are doing with her is, can somebody who has willingly submitted themselves to their own personal demons ever find a way to break that contract? She's because you've noticed how many times he keeps bringing up worm corruption around her.
Yeah.
And she isn't worm corrupted mechanically. She did get for a few episodes, but then purged out of her. But she's incredibly susceptible to worm corruption, and whether or not she is already on her path to becoming a Black Spiral, even though she'll never do the dance, is she there mentally, not spiritually? And is there a way you can get out of that contract you signed with the darkest part of yourself? Or by this point, have you gone have you traveled down a dark road for so long you can't get off of it? And that's where we're going with her character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
feel I feel like if she sticks with the pack, she'll or not any pack, but this pack specifically, she'll find that there's a lot of people who actually care and help her.
yes, we're
Because
like you don't realize that help is in front of you.
yeah,
And when people are like down bad like that, not being able to recognize help when you see it is what will tear you up.
yeah,
And I say that from like kind of sort of personal experience too, because with some of the characters I'm about to talk about, they come from a place that's just like a little bit personal about myself too, where it comes from human experience.
yeah, and
And
they say when you make characters, there's always a little bit of yourself that you put into them.
yeah, and while we were doing Ends the Road, I did a test run with her in I've been asking Fox to be in a game that he runs on Saturday for over the course of a year. And then finally I got my invitation to it as they were starting Deadlands, which is a cowboy game. And I got to test out ideas that I would do with Ends the Road with a different character, Nayati, Honágháahnii, Kinyaa'áanii. Take a wild guess as to what culture he's from.
Uh, uh, shit.
He's,
What is it
East
called?
Native American.
Yeah, that. Sorry.
Specifically Navajo is where he's from. And these were ideas I was getting from stuff like Red Dead Redemption, where you have Charles in that game. And I decided we're going to take the ideas I'm doing with Insta Road and we're going to tweak these around. Where Nayati was another character who was an objectively bad person that was just on the party team out of circumstance more than anything else. He shot good, and that's the reason why I kept him around. Because I mid-maxed him into becoming an all-guns build. He dual-wielded revolvers, and most of my shots in that game I would land because I just had that many dice going into it. And he, as part of Deadlands' lore, the reason why you have all these ghosts and zombies and monsters going around is because a Native American witch called Raven set off a chain of events that started the events of Deadlands. And Nayati's whole shtick was that this was justified, that you had to do this. The white men had taken over America. The land was lost. This was your last resort. You had to take them down with you. And he was all for it. And it wasn't until close to the end of the game where he has a conversation about Raven and then begins to realize, oh no, Raven was in cahoots with demons, and this had nothing to do with saving the Native Americans, and this was just for his own personal gain. And what he's been fighting for this entire time against America, where he's fighting both the Union and the Confederacy at the same time, and he begins to realize that this entire fight has been going nowhere and isn't going to go anywhere, and he's ultimately on a path that's going to lead to his own death.
Yeah.
But instead of trying to redeem himself, he says, well, fighting is the one thing I have that I'm good at. So I'm not going to stop fighting. Instead, I'm just going to fight just for the sake of it. I'm just going to go out, I'm going to shoot, I'm going to get involved in conflict just for the sake of getting involved in conflict. And that is how his character arc resolves, technically.
I mean, that's not a bad way to go.
Essentially, I went for the whole like Vegeta or like Baki Hanma kind of approach, where I fight there. I'm going to fight you. There's no good reason for me to do this. I'm doing this just because this is what I do.
This is what I want to do.
Yeah. If I were to put him into werewolf, I would make him a Uktena as his character, and he's the pissed off guy in the green poncho on the thumbnail. and those were ideas I got to test with Insta Road, and that game is concluded. We're off to another game that I'll talk about at the end of the video. And now that I've gone that route with Insta Road, I'm going to go down with Nayati. I'll go down somewhere else with Insta Road because I've seen how her story can end one way. Now we're going to try ending it in a different way with her character. All right.
I hope that turns out to be the good ending.
As we have a bit of a happy ending, started with Ham, the NPC in the Appalachia game, that she is now pregnant with his child, and whether or not she actually could become a parent or not. And let's see here. Rob Red, just for you, we're going to skip Paris. We're not going to talk about him in this video.
Yeah. Does he not like Paris?
Oh, he hates Paris. He hates him. Will's like Courage the Cowardly Dog Werewolf. That as stakes got higher, eventually he stopped trying to form schemes and just ran away from combat. And it's because he was the bait, and like the enemy would chase after Paris right into a trap.
Yeah.
He was a child of Gaia, so you can figure out what it was all about.
Going back to Ends the Road real quick, do you want to talk about some of her gifts, stats, or anything like?
Oh, you want me to pull the stat sheet for her?
Yeah,
I can do that.
Merits or anything.
All right. see. There it is. First of all, if you're using our 3.5 rules, take God's Grace. It's a 4-point merit. It'll turn your one. It'll turn one of your ones into a 2.
It's so good.
Yes, this is why Inzora is as deadly as she is because of that.
Yeah.
Is what how many fights we would don't how much longer combat would take if she didn't have that? Because when Kyle throws enemies at us, it's a lot of enemies at one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not a bad thing, Kyle. Don't think that's a bad thing.
Absolutely. I love battles that could be one person and take a long time, or multiple or take a long time. Either way, combat is good for me.
Here's your stats. Hamid Arun Wendigo, Strength 5, Dexterity 4, Stamina 4, Charisma 1, Manipulation 1, Appearance 4, Perception 3, Intelligence 2, Wits 3, Alertness 1, Athletics 3, Brawl 3, Intimidation 2, Dodge 4, Primal Urge 3, Animal Kin 1, Repair 1, Drive 1, Firearms 2, Melee 2, Stealth 2, Survival 2, Academics 1, Politics 1, Medicine 1, Occult 1, Technology 1. I suppose it's also we could just swap that with Science too. Backgrounds: Pure Breed 3, Totem 1, Spirit Favor 1, Mentor 1, Sept Favor 1. Merits: God's Grace 4 points, Mighty Morphin 1 point, Poison Resistance 1 point. Flaws: Arrest Warrant 4 points, Flip Sideways 2 points, along with 6 points of permanent rage, 3 points of permanent gnosis, 4 points of permanent wisdom, willpower, and my only gifts are Master of Fire, Resist Pain, Razor Claws, Beat of the Heart Drum, and Devouring Grime.
That's not bad.
So, yeah, very straightforward practical gifts.
Oh yeah. Any rights or
no rights?
No rights.
No. She is not the right master. She's not going to do the rights. That's Autumn Leaves' job.
I got you. And we're talking RITES.
Yes. And upon her shifting the cross form and then using Razor Claws, this is 11 damage dice that she's using.
Jesus Christ.
She hits you, it's going to kill you.
Oh yeah, instantly.
And if she uses Devouring Grime first, then you just can't run from that. She just shatters you.
Yeah.
And there we go. That's her character. It's very fun using her.
I bet. It was very fun using Grim.
Is what we probably one of my favorite moments with her is that fight with Autumn Leaves against his fallen brother, and then her and Matt Grenner just leaning against the wall, just watching it happen.
Yeah.
Because after all, it's not going to be impressive if I help you win and get your revenge. It's not going to be as satisfying.
Yeah.
So there we go. Who's next? Who I want to talk about next? Shall I bring up King of Greed's Orpheus game with Michelle?
Yeah. Do it up. Yeah.
He's running Orpheus in our server, and I get to try out Orpheus. Are you familiar with Yu Yu Hakusho, the anime?
Yes. I tried watching the live action.
Oh, that's a mistake.
Yeah. I couldn't get into
it. The whole anime is up on Netflix, the complete series, and it gets uploaded to YouTube every now and then too. But so Orpheus is basically Yu Yu Hakusho as a tabletop game. That's what that is. And Michelle Shae is the character I made for it. Now, in Orpheus, it takes a lot of stuff from Wraith the Oblivion, so a lot of Wraith terms I'll be using for this. There is you can play as 2 types of ghosts or 2 types of humans. You can play as a sleeper, who is a person who is frozen in ice, and then you become a ghost through that. Then after your work with the Orpheus group is done, you're put back in your body and then unfrozen. A skimmer becomes a ghost and temporarily dies when they fall asleep. That's what she is. And her whole character, the way I designed her too, she's the redhead in the thumbnail. Um, I made that AI asset with in the style of Yu Yu Hakusho in the text in the prompt, and her whole character is that she is this. Well, she was this promising ballet dancer that she was a star gymnast, very good acrobatics. Seemingly had this entire career in front of her. She had done several shows. She was going to go into this, and I know about this too because when I was in college, as one of my as one of my electives, I took a class that was a dance class. Not that I danced, but it was more about like the history of dance.
Yeah.
And like learning about the history of ballet turned out to be a little bit more interesting than I thought it would be. And so I know a few names when it comes to this. And it looks like she's going to go off and become this great dancer, and then she gets cancer. And it's lung cancer, and it's stage 3 when she discovers it.
That
And
sucks.
and immediately after that, she has to get off the career and start going through chemotherapy. To put into perspective, if you miss 1 week of dance practice, that is 3 months of musculature lost in your body that you've been gaining.
Ooh.
Yeah. So yeah, ballet is a very hard career to get into. And
I heard sumo is also sumo wrestling.
oh, oh yeah, like you eat a lot of healthy. That's a crazy way to live too.
Yeah.
And and with that, she's going through chemotherapy. Her muscles begin to wither. Her strength score plummets. She's losing her appetite. She's losing her her time to practice. And first, her cancer goes into remission. All right, good. And then it comes back for a second time. And by this point, like she's starting to go over the hill. She's trying to get back into the game, but she's losing her hair. She's lost her figure. Nobody's hiring her for dances anymore. And that goes away, and then it comes back a third time. And when it comes back a third time, that's when the Orpheus group does the whole "we have discovered life after death" announcement that is the plot of Orpheus. And by that point, she says, "Good, I can just die then." And her whole character is that she was this promising ballet dancer that has given up on her life, that she is ready to die. And it's okay if she does because there's life after death. She could just become a ghost and then pursue her career as a ghost. And her whole character is this idea that, you weren't put on this earth to die. You're here to live for a reason. And uh, if you were to just die and go to the afterlife, then that's just an absurdity and a waste of life, ultimately.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get too in detail about myself, but there was an idea where I was in that mindset where I didn't really see a point on in living anymore. And for a while that led to like all this self-destructive stuff I was doing that I briefly mentioned when we did the Black Sparrows episode for the first episode. And I end up burning down all my bridges. I end up cutting ties with Kyle during that time. And eventually I end up coming around, but a lot of like the black pill doomer thoughts I had during that period of my life, I'm using them again for Michelle. And now it's with me running that character, I'm looking at the issues I had back when I was 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 from the outside looking in this time. And I'm looking at the stuff that I used to say and the stuff that I used to think. And by playing as Michelle, I'm looking at myself now and I'm thinking, I'm so glad that I didn't follow through and that I'm still here today. That I ultimately backed out of my attempts, that I didn't go through with anything, and that I'm still here. And
I gotta say,
I,
I'm really glad you didn't.
thank you for telling me that, dude. That really does mean a lot.
Yeah.
And same thing too, because I didn't think I was going to go anywhere. That you're told that from a young age that you're going to be special, you're going to live, and you're going to change the world, and then If that was the case, then we would be seeing the world change every day. We would all be special. And if we're all special, then nobody's special. And that's not the way the world works.
Yeah.
There's we live in a world where only a few people are going to achieve that success. And if that kind of success is built up for me my entire life, and then I find out that it's unobtainable because of my own failures and somebody getting to the punch before I can, then that does something to you. And it was my own, well, real quest of trying to accept my own mundanities, that I wasn't going to be the person that I thought I was going to be, was one of the hardest things I ever had to do in my life. And looking at this, and what I wanted to do was go into Hollywood. I wanted to do acting. I wanted to do directing. That's what I wanted to do. And it turns out that no, I didn't have the talent to do that. But I have what I wanted to do for the rest for my life as a career. It's not my career, and honestly, after knowing like the casting couch, the freak offs, that kind of shit, like the sexual immorality of Hollywood, I'm kind of glad that dream died. That I'm not involved in something that's objectively evil like that,
Yeah.
and like having to like sell my soul and my beliefs just for a job. But I'm doing what I wanted to do for a career when I was 16 as a hobby and a partial. Well, it's not a side hustle because I'm not going to accept money for this, but it's like a side job that I'm doing when I'm 26, and I have a following. I have people that I can connect with. We in the server we got people that we talk to every day, and it's stuff that I couldn't have found if I did this as a career, and I'd rather be the favorite thing of 5 people than being seen by 5 million people, and I'm just another drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
Where it just means a little bit more to me doing this, and going into this, if our channel gets big, it gets big, but if we stay small, I'm fine with that. And just those kind of thoughts with Michelle, where you are on the cusp of your life isn't going where it's going to go, but there's so much more you can do with your life besides what you thought you were going to do. And that those are the thoughts that I'm exploring again with Michelle as a character. And by playing Orpheus and like looking at Black Pill content like that and knowing that the path I chose, it just makes me happier that I'm here now and that I'm living a better life, that I'm finally I'm getting a career on the move. I'm I'm not well off because you know what the past 4 years of America have looked like,
Yeah.
but I'm surviving and I'm doing all right for myself.
Yeah.
And and that's it. That's why I like playing as Michelle. And do you want to know her stats?
Yeah. Lay it on.
All right. Strength 2, Dexterity 5, Stamina 5. Combat's very fun with her.
It
Charisma
sounds
2,
like it.
Charisma 2, Manipulation 1, Appearance 4, Perception 3, Intelligence 3, Wits 2, Alertness 2, Athletics 4, Awareness 2, Brawl 3, Empathy 1, Expression 2, Intimidation 1, Persuasion 1, Streetwise 2, Subterfuge 2, Repair 1, Leadership 1, Performance 2, Stealth 1, and then Academics, Bureaucracy, Computer, Enigma, Investigation, Medicine, Occult, Politics, Science, and Technology are all 1.
It's not bad at all.
Backgrounds: 1 in Resources, 1 in Health Insurance, 1 in Status, and 2 in Destiny. Um, my
Health
discipline...
insurance?
Yeah, Health Insurance is a background in Wraith.
Interesting.
um, Arkanoi, I only have Outrage and and Congeal. It's called Congeal in this game. You make weapons and items out of your own plasma. Is what that does.
It's kind of cool.
See, my merits: 1 in Sprinter, 2 points Night Vision, 4 points Direction Sense. And then my flaws: Depression 4 points, Bad Credit 2 points, Deep Sleeper 1 point. And my starting angst is 6. So very close to becoming a shadow.
Yeah.
And And then my dark powers are Adder, Scales, Gossamer Webs, and Withered, where I will gain a point of angst and possibly result in a character death if I use any of those powers.
It'll be fine.
There we go. It's plans her too. She's a spirit detective ultimately, which what you see like when I'm talking about so much about Yu Yu Hakusho, just all the stuff that Yusuke was doing at the start of Yu Yu Hakusho. That's what she's doing.
So
As
for this
yeah.
character, where do you want her to go, and where is she heading towards?
Well, really, she's more like a meditation and exploration as to like the thoughts I had 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and why I don't believe in that kind of stuff anymore.
So
And
are you looking for the type of ending that you have now? Well, maybe not
yeah,
ending, but
yeah, yeah, an ending I have now. But if she dies, then there's still a life after death as a ghost,
yeah.
and there's still something that she can do with the Orpheus group in death. Because the whole shtick with Wraith the Oblivion is death is not the end,
Okay.
and
True.
the whole thing too, where given that there is an afterlife, and if I did follow through, then you're not guaranteed darkness. Like, what if you die and then it turns out, oh no, there are ghosts, and your suffering doesn't end in what you thought was going to be the end? Because I don't know, that's like that's so it tastes like a comforting thought, and that's a really spooky thought to me at the same time.
Yeah.
If like ghosts being real, I don't think that shit's real, but if it was real, I wouldn't have any reason to be scared of ghosts because like what I die and I'm still around. Okay, then what's the real fear and death anymore?
I have a couple experiences, but I can't say whether or not they're ghost like.
Just like creepy stuff that's happened to you.
Yeah, creepy stuff and just feelings, you
Right.
know.
There was one. It's if you want me to like pause like before I talk about the last character, like tell like kind of like a spooky story.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, there was one church I was going to like when I was like in elementary school, and it was some sort of VBS thing we were doing, I think. And the sanctuary, this church had two different sanctuaries. It was a big damn church, and for the kids sanctuary, there was this second floor that was a loft that you climb the stairs, and there's like all these different youth rooms, and you could lean over a railing and look down at the sanctuary down below. And I don't remember the kid's name, but it was just a kid I was friends with, and I we were I spent too much time in the bathroom, and I was leaving, and I was by myself for this, and I look over and I see he's in the kid sanctuary, and he's throwing a ball up at some guy on the loft, and I walk in there, and there's this dude, there's a staff. I the only logical explanation I have is that this was a staff member. I had never seen this man before in my life. By this point, we had been going to that church for 4 years. So you know these people at the church if you've been going to a church for that
Yeah,
long.
absolutely.
And what was really spooky about it when I think about it, I couldn't see his eyes. He was wearing glasses, like prescription glasses, that had a constant glare over them that made the entire lens white when we were throwing the ball back and forth.
Yeah.
And I go in there, I'm thinking like, oh, my friend's having a fun time with this. And then I go in and like, I start throwing the ball up and everything. And he gets the ball, he throws it up to the guy, and then immediately, like all the lights in the sanctuary just shut off immediately, and then shut back on, and the dude's gone. In the
That's
span of a second,
terrifying.
he's gone. Yeah, and I just remember like the ball was like right where he would have caught it, and just dropped right in front of us. And me and this kid just like look up there and like we just stare at like the spot that he used to be at, and we just look at each other, and he's freaked out, I'm freaked out, his jaw's open, I'm sure mine was too, and I still don't really have an explanation for it because I didn't hear a door open, and the men's bathrooms didn't have a door, but that was way too long of a like even if he sprinted he couldn't have gotten to that in time.
Yeah.
And I think about that and I genuinely don't have an explanation for that.
That.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's
I'm
just
getting
something.
shivers just thinking about it.
Yeah, because that's just like a really like freaky thought. Like how that story is like we didn't see that guy ever again. Like I never saw that dude again at that church, and me and him just left the sanctuary in dead silence. We didn't know what what to do after that happened, and we didn't tell that to anybody either. Because like oh we were playing ball with the guy that we didn't know the name of, and then he just disappeared.
He didn't talk or say anything.
No, he was saying like hi, hello when I stepped into his kid sanctuary, and that's all I heard from him.
Oh,
and that was it.
Spooky.
And like, so, yeah, weird stuff happened to you when you were a kid.
Oh yeah.
And the last character I want to talk about, that's the elf girl in the thumbnail. The fun thing about her is that I haven't actually played as her yet. So that Deadlands game I told you that Nayati was in, that game just ended. It just ended, and now we're starting a game that is run by the same guy that has drawn our banner for our YouTube channel. It's run by the same guy. Lone on 42 on Twitter if you want to check out this guy in commission for stuff.
Do it up. Check him out.
So as it turns out, if you want to have a furry character, don't get a furry artist to draw it. Get a manga artist to draw it. Which is where we got the proto design for Insta Road that I eventually gave over to Kay, and then he made the picture of Insta Road that you see today.
Yeah.
But the character I'm playing as is Liang Lingmeng. Liang Lingmeng, where this is a game that's set in Southeast Asia. And my character, this is all like Southeast Asian stuff, specifically Singapore is where we're at. And I decided I want to make a character that's Chinese, just for hell of it. And I'm looking at the elves. I'm thinking like the elves in this. I'm thinking like, what kind of culture do we have with the elves? They're Chinese. Let's make a Chinese elf. Let's do it. And well, where I end up going with her is that she is an Arcana cleric, where I've played as one in the past. The D&D community is sleeping on the Arcana cleric. This subclass is fantastic, and nobody pays it any attention.
I'll definitely have to check it out.
There's a ability it gets where a touch spell you use on another player character carries the same effects as Luster Restoration or Dispel Magic. Where if you have a character that's whole person and you use Cure Wounds on them, it cures the whole person. Boom.
That's not bad at all.
How crazy that is. And everybody's sleeping on this with the Arcana Cleric. But her character is that she's this exorcist, where she's going around, she finds the evil spirits, she's Taoist in design and flavor. And she comes in with the what's the name of this stick called again? The Fuzi stick. Fuzi. And she comes in with the stick and the talons. She says the word, she does the right, she casts a spell, the spirit's gone. And that's her day job, is that she's an exorcist. And similar to, I thought this was a genuinely good idea. You remember Neo Yokio? the anime that Jaden Smith made an anime where he's playing as himself with pink hair.
No, I don't know it.
Well, that is a gem of a series. I gotta send that to you. But by the way, the main character is an exorcist who doesn't like being an exorcist and just wants to go off and like spend money on clothes and sports and cars. Where this character took a little bit of inspiration from it, where the exorcist part is just her day job and that's it.
Yeah.
She does take the clerk stuff seriously, but it's just a job at the end of the day. And she does acupuncture as a side hustle. But once again, do not tell me this is cringe, because it's not. If you're familiar with the Toho games, I don't think you are. It's Baby's Gateway to Bullet Hell is what it is. Where you're dodging this entire curtain of bullets coming down on the screen. And the main character of those games is Reimu Hakure, where a lot of her is in the DNA of this character I'm about to play as. Where she's an exorcist and a demon hunter as a day job. She lives at a shrine. She's barely making ends meet with donations. And even though she's the hero, she's not necessarily that nice of a person. Where she's got a lot of scenes where she's really bitchy just for the sake of being bitchy. And whenever she encounters a new enemy, it's like, okay, how do we wrap this up as soon as possible so I can just go back off to cleaning my house?
Yeah.
And yes. Let's get this job done with. I got shit to do.
Yeah, I gotta go take a nap.
And that's the kind of personality I got going on with Liang, where I got something going on. Okay, when can we wrap this up? Am I going to get paid for this? Am I not going to get paid for it? Okay, well, when can we get this resolved as soon as possible so I can go back to my job? Is the kind of character I'm going with her.
Yeah.
Where probably like less like the bitchiness angle, but more on the I'm looking for money kind of angle, where a cleric that's just out looking for cash. Because usually it's the rogue that's doing that, or a fighter, but you don't really see any money hungry clerics with D&D. And I'm very excited to use her because I'm going to be the party's healer ultimately, where I like being the heal button in this game. And same thing too, because it's an Arcana cleric. I have Firebolt, I have Shocking Grasp, I have Prestidigitation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff I get to do with this character. So eventually it's going to end up being
great too.
It's going to end up being a jack of all trades ultimately. And same thing with the High Elf, where advantage on saving throws against the charm effect. I don't get put to sleep. A lot of good stuff coming my way.
Yeah, right.
And I might be the most
objective. Is pretty good.
I might be the most objectively normal character in that too, because we have a guy who's essentially Frank West from Dead Rising in the game, and that's the character.
Hey.
I suppose there's one more character I can talk about, and that's the Tuesday Curse of Strahd game I tell you about every now and then.
Yeah.
I want this game to end. I hate Curse of Strahd.
The one where I got you all riled up about.
Yeah, we're just Curse of Strahd does not work. It never works as a game. This module fucking sucks, and our dungeon master's doing the best he can with it. And Madrat is the character I'm using for that game, because dog, this is the 7th Curse of Strahd game that I have played.
Yeah, soon to be the 8th? Question mark.
I know what's in this game. I know what's in it. I know all the NPCs. I know all the locations of all these items. I already know this. And so, in order to ensure the safest passageway from point A to point B, I played an Eloquence Bard. Yes, I power gamed. I don't care that I powered game because this is Curse of Strahd. So, behold, the skill floor. The lowest I can roll on Persuasion and Deception is an 18. And after my most recent level up, it is now a 20. So, behold, I can no longer fail those checks.
And I got invited to a Curse of Strahd game, and I was like, oh, what would I play? And I'm like, maybe an Eloquence Bard? Glamour Bard? I was like, I don't know yet.
And it turns out, when you're having conversations with the Burgermaster and the Wapter family, having a bard is invaluable.
Oh, yeah.
And Madrat has become the guy that's keeping the gears of that game going, where I'm the party face, I'm the one that's talking to all the NPCs because I already know what to say. And I'm gearing conversations towards opening more opportunities and stuff to see for the players that haven't played Curse of Strahd, to make sure that we can see everything this game has and all the good stuff it has before we end up in another fucking deadly ass by design combat encounter. And it's not like I'm in misery playing Curse of Strahd, but it's more like there's other modules we could be playing that we'd be having a better time with.
Yeah.
And along with it, this group isn't that big on roleplay or more about combat, so this isn't exactly the game to play with this group either. And now you might be wondering, what does Madrat look like? Look up the game Madrat Dead. That's him. Let's get Ryan's live reaction to seeing this character.
Yeah, I'm already. Oh, I gotta say, he looks like exactly what I would think Burst Bruiser looks like.
I saw this character. This was a pandemic game. It was one of those games that got super big during the pandemic because nobody had anything to do. And I saw this character design, immediate love at first sight with this. Just everything about that character design is fantastic. And like dog, it's a rat that's like vivisected, just walking around like this. It's like it's cute and it's creepy at the same time. And so I'm playing as a reborn mechanically, a reborn Eloquence Bard, where I've got the organs of 5 different people stuffed into me in this rat body, like this rat of unusual size body. And I've got all these different memories of people that aren't me going around. And along with that, it's just like the occasional like schizophrenic episode where I start seeing stuff that isn't real. And just playing as Madrat, just playing as a character that's like funny and crazy by design. And he's also like this like anti-hero kind of character because hey, I'm going to do the right thing, I'm going to try to be heroic. Oh, hold on a minute, that looks a little bit dangerous, I'm out of here. Because he's heroic one minute and then he's cowardly the other minute. He's just going back and forth between the two extremes. It's what I was doing with Paris, but with a more openly virtuous kind of character. And along with that, we had a player character death happen in in Curse of Strahd. The half-orc fighter got what he deserved. What did you think was going to happen just running up into melee combat with Strahd von Zervik? At least it was in character, right? And now he's dead. So Madrat has realized I have a chance to reproduce. We turned the half-orc fighter into a zombie, and now we've got this Frankenstein orc in the party with us.
That's not bad.
Yeah, that got me excited. Where we're having an argument with the wizard saying, Madrat, if you do this, it's gonna be like dark power inside of our orc, and it's gonna be this like lich Frankenstein orc fighter running around with dark magic. And I said, well, that just sounds really cool. Let's just do it anyway. You're right, that does sound cool. Let's do it.
That's what that conversation went. So many things can go wrong.
It can go wrong, therefore we gotta do it.
I guess, yeah, you're not wrong.
If it leads to more roleplay opportunities, then do the thing.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. I agree with you there.
Yeah. And we're still playing as this character, and just it's really fun playing as them too. And what inspired the decision was, you haven't met Gary, have you?
I have not.
Gary is our friend from Australia that's in the same group, Friday group with Fox. And for Ghost of Saltmarsh, he played as Misfortune from Toonstruck. Do not look that character up. You're immediately going to get fast art.
Okay.
And he played that character so well. It was a character that only had 2 scenes in Toonstruck, the game where she appears in. And he goes over and he reinvents his character, and she stole the campaign. She earned that main character spot. She was fantastic, to the point where we had to bring her back as an NPC for 2 more games after that. Because it was like Ragnar, it was like Vigo, and Sylvester, where you have stolen this show. I can't get enough of you. We gotta use you some more.
Yeah.
And that's what inspired me playing as Madrat, where I take a character that already exists, I tweak it, I tool it, and try to make the best character I can with this, while staying true to the character, while also adding my own ideas to it. And that's it in terms of characters like that. We're now at present day.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got any questions for me?
No.
All right, because I already told you who my favorite is, and that's Yan playing as him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here and let's see, any other crazy thoughts you got?
I don't have any other crazy thoughts. I'm just glad to hear about the characters and you're enjoying playing them.
Yeah, just playing tabletops. This has become my main way to unwind now.
Yeah.
Just going in and doing tabletop games.
Same.
No. That's the experiences you can have in this. You can't find this with a video game. You can't find this with a movie.
Exactly. It's stuff that plays out into your mind as you are playing, and it's your own scene, your own vision of what you want as your character to be.
Whatever it is, just this is great.
Right.
And
if you have nothing else to add, then I guess we'll end it here.
Yeah, we're done.
All
we're
right.
done. I'll upload the thumbnail.
All right.
And you upload the video.
Have a good one, guys.
Right.
Thank you for joining us in Character Corner episode 3.
Yeah, this is the most I'll toot my horn for a while.
All right.
All right.
Have a good night.
All right. GN.